All right. So on the foam, before we get to cutting anything, we need to reserve a piece of foam that is going to go inside the pot, which we're then going to push our cactus pieces in. Essentially what we're creating is a false bottom to the pot, so that way we don't have to create this long paper mache and fill it with a gabillion rocks. So I'm gonna take my pot, I'm gonna put it upside down, okay? And actually mine is a little bit skinny, which is fine because we're actually gonna cut it skinnier anyway. And we're going to trace, I'm gonna use a Sharpie just so that you could see better. Try to center under here. And I'm gonna trace a circle. Okay. It's gonna be pretty approximate. No big deal there. Now, I want a piece of foam that fits inside of here. So if I go by the outside edge, go ahead.
Are we supposed to take like this piece off? I was grabbing a knife, so I didn't hear.
Yep, no problem. No, I would leave yours on. Mine just cracked, so I left it off.
Okay. So like just put it on top?
Yep, I would go at one end though. That is a good question. We want to kind of go to the ends. And here comes Mr. Sontag. All right. We've got our pot. Yes.
Do we just dump out everything in our bowl already?
Yes. So like if I tilt my iPad here, you can see how I dumped it. You don't want to be careful on how you dump it. Okay. So that you can trace it. So what we're trying to do is get a piece of foam that's going to fit inside of this. So I trace this outside edge. This is about the, let me go right under the camera here. This is about the inside edge. So we need to make our first piece smaller than this piece. Okay, do you guys understand why that is? Because we want it to fit inside the pot. So we trace the outside so we have a good circle. And all I want you to do now is to draw a smaller circle. Doesn't have to be perfect because we can trim it. Then we're gonna get into our safety on how we're gonna cut the foam. Okay. So we trace the outside rim of that. Now we've made a smaller circle. And this is the one that we're gonna cut out, the smaller circle. Go ahead with your question.
What if I accidentally cut it too small, then what?
We can shim it. So that's where you take like a little scrap piece and kind of shove it in there. Okay. So it's very flexible, but a good question. All right, so we've got that. And now we need to cut this piece out, okay? So you have a cutting surface. We have a cutting surface to protect the work surface that we're on. So whether you're at your desk, your kitchen table, we wanna make sure that we're not scratching up that surface, okay? So I asked you to get a knife that's sharp. Non-serrated is best. So non-serrated means that it's smooth like this, okay? This is the sharp part. This is the back of the blade, okay? So the blade part always looks a little different than the back part of it. It's really important to keep track of that. You guys should know that by now. How many of you help cut vegetables at home or cook dinner or like slice your steak? You should be good. The important thing is your hand placement when you're using a knife, okay? So we're more scoring the foam. We're not really like cutting through it. So it's not about like any muscle. It's about our hand placement. So we're going to be cutting out a circle. So if my hand is here and I'm cutting here, what's the problem? Karina?
Oh, I had a question.
Sure.
How do you make the second circle again? Like the inside, the bigger one?
This is what I traced. And then I had to draw it smaller because we want a circle that fits inside the pot, not outside. Good question. But Karina, if I am holding my foam here and I'm cutting here, what's my issue?
You're gonna like cut your hand because your hand's in the way.
Right, exactly. So your hand needs to go to the side of where you're cutting. So if you're cutting this way, or in front of it, depending on if you were doing a small cut here. Same with vegetables. If you were cutting a carrot, right, you're holding it, you're cutting in a different spot, okay? What would happen if you do get cut? What would the first thing that you would do, Sophia?
Go wash your hand on like under cold water, and then either put a Band-Aid on it or put some like Neosporin on it.
Yeah. So it's okay if you slip. Everyone makes mistakes. Like you know, whether you're using an X-Acto blade, whether you're cutting in the kitchen, I've watched cooking shows where the chef accidentally like has a little cut. So it's okay. We're not going to panic. And the other thing we're going to do when we're cutting is we're not going to press too hard. If we try to use all our muscles, that's when people cut themselves. Okay. So this is the really fun part. Okay. So we're going to score the metal. We're going to do it in sections, or the foam, not metal, by cutting not all the way through. I'm just cutting a line down. So I cut down and off to the side. Okay. And I did not cut all the way through. I just scored it. Okay, so this is where you get to use your karate chop skills. So sometimes I use my knee. Sometimes I use the side of the table. So we're gonna move the table here a little bit, all right? I can take this on my knee, right? So my knee is right underneath where the cut is. And you, hurrah, karate chop that piece off. That's what's really fun about the foam. So you're not cutting it all the way through. You're scoring it in small pieces. And then we're going to do some shaving of it. But right now what we're doing is my hands to the side. I'm cutting through a small part, right? My hands on the handle. I'm not cutting deep. And then I can karate chop it to snap the foam. So this is how much I cut. And then I snap it off, and it's really fun. Okay, so what I want you guys to do right now is go ahead and start working on cutting out that small circle. When you have smaller pieces like this, sometimes I just snap it off with my hand because you don't have enough to karate chop it. You don't have to karate chop it on your knee. You could karate chop it on the back of your chair, but whenever I teach this, I always like to karate chop it because I think it's kind of fun. All right. Sophia, question first and then Karina.
How deep am I supposed to cut it? Because it's like I'm trying to karate chop it off like the side of the table, and it's like hard, and I don't want to do it like too hard.
So my cut was this deep from here to here, from my two thumbnails. And there. Part of it is the force needs to be behind the cut to karate chop it. Go ahead, Karina.
Is this fine for scoring? Because I don't know if I did it right.
I'm gonna spotlight you real quick. Hang on. So now I'm thinking about, I have this whole rest of this piece to make my cactus. And I can make a tall, long cactus. I can make a short, round cactus. So what you're essentially going to do from here on out is plan. And you can think about, like, I want a cactus piece that goes like this. Totally fine. Okay. Now what we want to do is preserve as much foam as we can until our sculpture's built. So if I'm doing a piece like this, before I use anything else, I'm going to cut it here by scoring it and snapping it off before I start cutting the other pieces. And ultimately, we're going to stick one of those wooden dowel rods into our sculpture so that we can press it into that base that we just made, okay? So eventually, when you've got that, we're just going to press that right into there to make it stick in there before we paper mache. So if I was going to cut this, I would score across. I would snap it on my knee. And then I would cut out with the exact same process. Go ahead, I heard a question.
when I like put the basin, is it supposed to be like up to the very top of the like of the bowl, or is it supposed to be like under?
I have it just under, so it looks like kind of a potted plant.
Okay.
However you want it though is really up to you in the end. I did give you guys each some of those stones in your kit. That will eventually cover it up. Philip, go ahead.
Oh, mine doesn't really fit, so should I just like make it a little smaller?
Yep, exactly.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Other questions I can answer? All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna start cutting out this shape by scoring and snapping. This one was closer to the edge, so I didn't get a good snap on my knee. You guys can kind of see the process. And then what you're gonna do at the end of class is we're gonna keep all of these little scraps until the end of the project, unless they're teeny, teeny, tiny. Because if you look at my cacti here, some of these little tiny ones came from my scraps. So you have that bag that everything was packed up in.
Ms. Zill. When I was cutting, like part of my circle came off like right there. Is that fine?
Totally fine, because it doesn't matter if you have gaps. That's why we have those rocks to cover up the spaces.
Okay.
And even if you didn't, what we would do is you would take, someone asked earlier about what if it doesn't fit or it's too small. You can take like those little shavings that you end up with and you shim it in there, and then we could break it off, you know.
Okay.
If you've ever seen somebody install a window or a door, like most houses aren't like perfectly built, so you have to shim things to make them level. Good question. Paige, go ahead.
So when I'm putting mine inside, so if I put it inside, it's not going down the first layer. It's like staying up. So do I have to cut it more?
You cut a little smaller. The other thing you'll notice, Paige, is that because these have a slightly different shape, sometimes you might want to angle your cut a little bit. So I'll show you what I mean on this cactus piece. Okay, so when I'm cutting it, if I instead of cutting it flat, I could shave off a piece that's a little angular, and then it would drop down in there more because it's skinnier at the bottom. Okay, awesome. You guys are doing great. Sophia, go ahead.
If I'm doing like a mushroom, for like the base of it, would I just use like this, and then would I just cut it like straight?
Correct.
Like, okay.
Yep, and I would cut it along one of the ends. And then what you can do, okay, just like anything else, we're gonna be really careful. You can't make it too small because you won't have enough room to hold it, okay? But then you can shave it off. So say I was taking this piece, and I'll flatten this, okay? I'm on my cutting surface. I've got my fingers way over here. You can kind of round it out to make it more like a tube.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Right. Other thing you could do, Sophie, if it's not big enough, and this is why in your kit you guys have toothpicks. Okay, so we'll talk about this a little more next time, is if you need to make a thicker piece, you can attach to get something wider. So say you wanted a bigger mushroom. Now I have two pieces attached together, and then I could round out a tube from that. Okay. Awesome. 2 minutes left for some final questions. Paige?
So I cut off like a little bit more of it, and like how you were saying, and I put it in like that deep. Is that good?
I think that looks great. Yep.
Okay. Because it's not coming out, so there's no other way.
That's sometimes a good reason to say, I love it. Philip. And then Theodora, you're next.
Is it fine if it's sticking out a little bit?
Yeah, it's up to your personal preference. We're going to paper mache it. So if you like the look of it sticking out, awesome. If you don't, we can trim it down a little bit.
Okay.
Okay. Good question. Theodora?
Can I show you my circle?
Love to. That looks good. Can I see it from the side? Yeah, that looks great. If you want it to sink in there more, you could cut it at a little bit of an angle, the bottom part, you know, and by bottom part, I mean, like if you're looking at it from the side, if this is your top, you know, you could angle it a little bit at the bottom. If you like how that fits, then you're totally good.
Thank you.
All right, Philip, go ahead.
What should we have done for next class?
For the next class, I want you to have your circle base in your pot. Good question. And I want you to have decided on a shape for your cacti.
Okay.
All right. Karina, go ahead.
Can I like show you the shape I want really quick?
Sure.
I was gonna go, I found this photo like that shape. So like, how would I do that? Should I first start with like the base like right there?
Perfect, yes. So exactly right. You're gonna make, if I go here, you're gonna make this tube part, right? And then you're going to toothpick in an elbow.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. So by next class, like just in this, carve out the like shape.
Yeah, you don't have to spend a ton of time on this. If you're really into it and you want to work on it, totally fine. By next class, I want you to have this first part, that base done, and know where you're going with the next one. So that way in the next class, I can show you tips and tricks for getting different shapes of cacti. Knives should go back in the kitchen. Just wash them like normal. You know, and you can get it the next time that you need it. Obviously, make sure, you know, you're carrying it safely. You're not filling your arms with stuff. Same precautions you would take at home in the kitchen. Paige, go ahead.
So I was looking up like cartoon cactuses, and I kind of like something like that. So if I were to do something like that, should I draw the thing or should I attach that part? Or should I draw it with it?
The flower, or are you talking about the second little nub?
Yeah, the little one.
The little one? I would make those as two separate ones.
Okay. And then like add it in from an angle?
Correct.
Okay.
Awesome. Annalisa, you doing good? You're fine. All right. We are out of time. We're over. If anyone wants to ask any more questions, I'll stay on. Just make sure, same thing like with the clay bowl, you're being respectful of your family's space. You're cleaning up after yourself. Any tiny scraps get scraped into the garbage. Unfortunately, it's not recyclable. Bigger pieces hold on to so that you have them to make little sculptures with.